Today, we are going to hear from a paralysis survivor. Born and raised in Toronto, Neuro-Rehab Occupational Therapist, author of Purpose in Paralysis, and new mom to the sweetest little boy, she is an inspiring and intelligent woman who suffered from trauma as a result of a motorcycle accident in 2010. The accident left her with a spinal cord injury and paralysis from the waist down. Struggling to cope with stress, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and chronic unworthiness, she discovers the medicine of mindfulness, compassion, emotional energetic work, and shamanism. Alongside 2 bachelor degrees in health and education and a master's degree in occupational therapy, she describes her greatest accomplishment as learning to accept and love herself. Her healing journey also led her to a call towards reconciliation and decolonization. Her experience, knowledge, and personal battle against trauma sheds light on our individual journeys and encourages utmost resilience. Welcome to the Lemon Said podcast, Jaisa Sulit.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be a part of this.
I'm honored to have you here. So we're going to start with some rapid fire questions. Book or podcast?
Podcast, for sure.
Really?
I don't have time to read, but when I'm in the car by myself, I'll put on a podcast.
Okay. I honestly thought you were going to say book because you've written one before.
I know.
But I think that's a score for me now.
It is.
Thanks. Fresh food or fried food? Oh.
My mouth is all about fried, and then my body's like, no, fresh. But then
True
I always
Filipina.
go for like fried first.
That's a true Filipino.
Yeah.
Physical strength or mental strength?
Hands down, mental strength.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And when life throws you lemons?
You make lemonade.
Yeah.
On that note, the best lemonade I've ever had. Thank you.
Really?
I'm not lying.
She's just being kind.
It's the 3rd time saying that.
Everyone's going to start lining up, not for the podcast now.
Just
They're going to
for
be
the
coming
drink.
for the lemonade.
I've never had it taste like that.
Oh, man. Okay, so that was the fun part. Now we're going to get into the extra fun part, which is the interview itself. So I first want to let everyone know that I think Jaisa is an incredibly inspiring woman. So I think the first question that I naturally have to ask her, after all of her years of work experience, school, and just life, do you believe that you're the same person today as you were in your early 20s?
Definitely not, and I sure hope not. Yeah, for context, like all of us, but I'll speak for myself. In my teens and 20s, I had little self-awareness. I wasn't aware that I suffered from chronic self-judgment and that I had no self-acceptance practice and thus no self-compassion, no self-care. So fast forward to now, I can say that I have that in my life.
That's amazing. How did you come to discover that you had these chronic issues building up over those years? At what age or what point in your life did you say, oh shit, I need to deal with this?
It was a year after my motorcycle accident.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that motorcycle accident be what you describe as the turning point in your life where I guess you kind of you look at all things and you say, this has got to change?
For sure. For sure. And funny that you say things have got to change because 2 days before the motorcycle accident, it was August 26, 2010. I had just turned 30. No, I was going to turn 30 actually. And I wrote in my journal a request to God. And it was, please change my life.
Oh my God.
I know, because I was just very unhappy and unfulfilled. I had broken up with every boyfriend I had been with. And whether it's like 2 year, 4 year, it was always me who had broken up. I had changed careers twice already. I left OT to become a teacher.
OT is occupational therapy?
Yes, occupational therapist to become a teacher. Left being a teacher to be an OT again. And then that summer I was going to leave OT to explore being a lawyer. And I was trying to change everything around me, right? But not realizing that some interchange had to happen. And 2 days after that is when I had the motorcycle accident. Yeah, up until that accident, I was just kind of lost and not that aware of, I just knew I needed change. And then the first year of my accident, I was actually usually excited and feeling great because for the first 3 months, I was an inpatient at Lyndhurst. And as an inpatient, life is kind of, for me, it was kind of cool because it was the first time I ever lived outside of home. So it was like my own space. Yeah.
And people serving you.
People serving me. And, and I always had visitors. Every day I had a visitor. So it was nice. And then after that, I did rehab full time, going like as an outpatient, supplemented with going into private clinics. But then it wasn't until the 1 year mark after my accident. So I had progressed in that 1 year from a wheelchair to a walker, from walker to 2 single point canes, then to 2 hiking sticks, and still needing a wheelchair for like long distances. So I was really progressing in that first year. But when the 1 year anniversary came and I still wasn't able to go back to work, because my job as a neuro-rehab OT is to help folks get out of bed, stand up, and help them walk.
Which you can't do.
How can yourself. I do that if I was still walking with 2 hiking sticks on my balance? So, and I thought I would be running by the time, a year had passed. And I was still living with pain. And so I was like, this is my life now. I have to live with pain. I can't walk barefoot. I can't do Filipino folk dancing because you have to do that barefoot.
Yeah.
I can't snowboard. I can't run. Like, there are all these things. And so that's when I really started to get depressed and have anxiety. And so at the 1 year mark, soon after that, I went online and I literally Googled mindfulness free Toronto. Because I knew about mindfulness through the employee wellness program at my work. Because they would have like free mindfulness sessions during the lunch hour for staff. So that's how I heard about it. And since I wasn't at work for a year, I hadn't practiced mindfulness. I'm like, let's see what's free in Toronto right now. And that's how I found the 8-week program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction by John Kabat-Zinn. And it was free because the guy who was teaching it, he was this retired guy who was passionate about teaching the course. And so I took that course, and over the 8 weeks, I developed this practice in becoming more aware of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm sensing, becoming like an observer of my experience. And not only did that capacity to observe yourself help me with pain, anxiety, and stress, but for the first time, I started to see myself and my patterns and how, oh my gosh, I think that, I believe that, I've been suffering. And that's when I realized that I had been suffering from chronic self-judgment. And it was more clear when I looked back. I was like, wow, I didn't even realize how unhappy I was. Because, you could journal, but like in the moment awareness of what's happening and how, oh, that's why I feel this way. That's why I act that way. It's because I think that way. And I believe that. And to be able to just step back. So that's when I said, okay, I need to get trained in this and share this with others.
That's amazing. And then is that the same time that you actually took the courses to become a mindfulness teacher?
Yeah. So I had a really great auto insurance adjuster, which I just want to share that because normally it's negative.
Right.
But there are positive experiences, and the adjuster funded all of my flights and accommodation in Boston.
Oh, wow.
Where all of the training was. And obviously she she approved the funding of, the training. So I was able to do, go to Boston 3 times over the course of 2 years to become a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because to your earlier point, there are a lot of individuals, myself one, it was really, really hard getting support from the insurance companies.
And not having to stress about an adjuster that doesn't support me that allowed me to focus on my rehab.
Right. That's really important. Did you also have a lawyer that supported your case and your recovery?
I did. And the first lawyer I had was recommended by a friend, like one of the titas who's like, oh, I know somebody who is a lawyer. And I was like, okay. And, I'm in like, ICU and just signing, contracts. And then it was after 3 months of seeing very suspicious activities, like submitting treatment plans that wasn't exactly was done. And that happened a few times. And I was like, okay, I think these guys are just trying to see me as a dollar sign. And so that was the first time that I learned that when it comes to the auto insurance industry and you have a file with somebody, like you've got an insurance file, that you're the boss. Because I didn't realize that, I could pick any lawyer, I could pick any case manager, I could pick any physio. Like, I'm the boss. I'm going to hire you. And if I'm not satisfied with your service, I can fire you. But they don't tell you this.
Right.
But I'm glad that I learned that way. Because then I went on to share that and go to different hospitals and share. But then I did my research and then I ended up finding who I did. I ended up going with Greg Neinstein of Neinsteins and Associates. But one thing I learned with looking for a lawyer, it's like dating. You've got to shop around.
It's true. And I'm glad you had the ability to do that, because there are a lot of people who don't even know that you can find a lawyer. Some people feel they can't afford it, but there are different types of payment plans and options. But your lawyer should be on your side as well as your insurance company.
Yes. And they are on your side. And if you can, from the get-go, be on the same page and be like, you know what, lawyer, adjuster, you're both on my team. I don't want this. You're on my side. You're on my side. You're both on my side. I need you both to work together. And that's really how it should be.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's an important message that not a lot of people talk about when we think of trauma, but the administrative and the legal aspect is actually a huge part in it. So thank you for sharing that with our listeners.
What I've learned on this journey is energy, spirit, and medicine that includes energy and spirit can go deeper than what Western medicine can acknowledge. I'm
just starting to learn that. Not that I've explored it yet or felt the benefits of it. I'm just starting to learn now. And I'm really excited to see what it will bring to me. But I am a victim of that mindset. I'm like, if you can't prove it, I don't want it.
That's how I was too. That's how I was.
Until you get desperate.
That's the only time I opened up to it. Right. I got desperate.
Right. And that's essentially where I am now. So I'm excited to get to the point where you are today. But I want to go take a little step back, because you touched on childhood trauma a couple of times, but also your heritage. Both of you and I have a lot in common. One of them being our culture. And as you were talking about your childhood, I'm like, yeah, that was mine too. That was mine too. So there's got to be something here that shapes who we are, because our cultures, that stems way back. Like they're similar and it shapes us. So I understand that you are a second generation immigrant from the Philippines. And like myself, but I'm curious, what role do you feel your parents played in your upbringing throughout your childhood?
Yeah, especially because I didn't have any siblings. I did have my grandmother, my Lola, who helped raise me. It was really just my parents who, number one, were the main influencers and how to be in relation to anybody, how to be in relation to yourself. So everything I learned and how to relate to myself and others, I learned from my parents. And a lot of what I'm going to say is related to them being Filipino, first generation Canadian, but I know there's similarities across cultures. That being said, the being Catholic, and with all respect, I was raised Catholic, but there are certain things that limited me. Our mother's generation and beyond, like our Lola's generation, I'm learning because of all of my friends, and we talk about the same issues and problems. And as I talk to my therapist, I'm seeing that, oh, this is a thing. Our mothers and our grandmothers were emotionally immature.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my mom's inability to honor my anger is because she wasn't allowed.
Right.
She didn't have that capacity. So how is she going to meet mine?
Right.
Same with my grandmother. A lot of that is cultural, right?
Agreed.
It's that even though a lot of Filipino titas are like bold and, big and bold, there's also the ones that are just, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And because our mothers, for many of us, were emotionally immature, their emotional needs are not met. And so that lands on the daughter to meet the needs.
Yeah.
And you put something else on top of that is so many of our mothers are afraid to divorce. That's just not what you do in our culture. And so here you have unhealthy marriages and, they don't know how to communicate, and it's just, they just stay together and just growing up in an unhealthy, like that's the biggest thing that you can give to a kid is a happy marriage, happy father, happy wife. Even if you split up, at least you're both happy, you move on. So yeah. And then other things related to being Filipino and the fact that we were colonized by the Spanish is there is a lot of white supremacy in our culture. Not only there's racism against Black people, but we're racist against dark Filipinos. For example, in kindergarten, during parent-teacher interviews, my teacher told my mom that I had my hands on my nose pinching the bridge of my nose. And my mom was quite embarrassed because she didn't know that I continued to do that. But that's something I was raised to do, is to try to make your nose look more Caucasian.
Yeah. I remember my parents doing the exact same thing to me. And when my baby brother was born, he's 7 years younger than me, they would teach me to do that to him while he was in the crib.
So, that anti-Black and also the anti-queer, I had crushes on girls, and I wish I could go back in time and explore it, but no, that was not allowed.
Of course not.
Yeah. So those are just some examples of, the pains of our culture.
Right. Which is unfortunate, but I think the best part about it is that we're learning about it now, and so much that we're able to talk about it. I think that's the biggest barrier, is not being able to talk about it. We all have the same experiences, but is anyone talking about it? No, because the majority of us are ashamed or we're afraid of getting in trouble. But I think that's the goal that we're trying to do here, is just break that barrier. I want to touch a little bit more on how this pushed your career path, how it shaped it, and who you are today.
Yeah, I think someone who not only had trauma, but also who lived so much in the head, that combination of not living in my body and having suffering in the body kind of laid this groundwork for, this is why we need mindfulness. This is why we need self-compassion, because mindfulness is what allows us to have that curious awareness to looking at, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? What's going on? How am I experiencing life in this moment? And then the self-compassion part is what allows me to comfort, soothe, and warm myself up, make myself feel safe when whatever is coming up is very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.